Stage, the wonderful Paul Brett, who's going to give a talk about fundraising. So welcome, Paul Brett.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Right, fundraising. Everybody here in this room, I'm sure, has been involved with some level of fundraising at some time during your lives. I'm sure you've all run marathons, climbed mountains, sat in bathtubs full of beans, collected bottle tops for Blue Peter, whatever it is. I'm sure somebody in this room has done something in their lives for a good cause and for other people. Purely by accident, it's become a theme in my life, and I've had a few ideas along the way and had a lot of fun doing it. So here are my adventures in fundraising. Okay. So I call it effing beanies and a deck of cards. Let me explain. So as a young boy, 16 years old, I ran away from home and joined the Royal Navy. And there's me over on the right-hand side there. I'm probably about 18 by this stage. And I joined a ship, HMS Alderney, which was a fishery protection boat, bobbing around the North Sea, you know, climbing on board fishing vessels, raiding oil rigs, and generally having a whale of a time. Now, the captain of the ship, lovely fella, he said to me, Paul, one day, he said, we're going to the island of Alderney, obviously, HMS Alderney. We went to Alderney every year for Alderney Week. And he said, we're going to do some fundraising and raise some money for the RNLI lifeboat for the island. He said, I want you to come up with an idea. And I said, oh, thanks. So, Royal Navy, I mean, they are world experts, leaders in profanity, swearing, yeah. So, simple idea, let's have a swear box. We had a small crew on this particular ship. It was only about 30. And in about the 4 weeks he gave me to raise some money, we raised £600. So we were really good at this sort of thing. So, you know, ka-ching, swearing, you know, we often got our words in a mucking fuddle. And so that was my first little start, if you like, of fundraising. Now, when I left the Royal Navy, I left I was in communications. I was a radio operator, so it made sense when I left the Royal Navy to join BT as a communications kind of guy. When I joined there, I went on a management course, and they said part of the course it was a long 6-month thing, yeah. And they said, we're going to have a Challenge Annika type affair, and you're going to start off with £50, and you've got to raise £500 for a charity of your choosing in teams. Okay, so my little team said, come on, Paul, what's your idea? And do you remember these toys, the Beanie Babies? Do you remember that craze that there was? Okay, so if you don't remember, back in the late 90s, these little soft toys came out on the market by a company called TY, okay? And they became highly collectible. People were trading with them on eBay, and you know, they were buying them for £5 and selling them for hundreds of pounds, even thousands of pounds. It became a real big craze. So I thought, this is great. If we can get hold of some of these bears, because they were really popular at the time, we might be able to make a little profit out of them and reach our £500 target. So we set up for Guide Dogs for the Blind, pulled ourselves sight and hound, and we started collecting these Beanie Babies, hoping that we could do something with them. Okay? Now, we ended up with a few, and there's a little collection of them at home, and the fellas that I was working with, and we thought, well, we got a donation from the company itself, TY. I wrote to them and said, you know, this is what we're doing, would you make a donation? So they gave us about 90, and then all the toy stores in the southeast I was popping into, begging, and you know, I got quite a few of them. Anyway, we ended up in the local papers, and we went to a fair. They had a beanie convention, would you believe it, okay? Massive thing, and we had a little stall there, and we raised £900. So we broke our £500 target straight away. I'm thinking, this is great, but we can do better than that. And I think you can see on here, I thought, well, let's get some of these signed and see if we can make even more money. Now, I found out this morning, actually, that eBay, it was in the early days of eBay, and the Beanie Baby sensation actually helped eBay become as popular as it is today. Because at one time, over 10% of everything on eBay in the late 90s was all related to Beanie Babies. You know? It's a fact I found out today. So anyway, we ended up getting some of these, mainly the bears, signed by, well, the Prime Minister. I mean, Tony Blair signed for us, and Richard Branson. And we ended up with this huge collection of Beanie Babies, and we ended up in the national press in the Mirror. Paul Burrell, you'll remember Princess Diana's ballet, he signed the Princess Bear for us. And so, by enhancing the value of the bears by getting signatures on them, we raised a lot more money. So we raised, in the end, about £6,000, there we go, and we created, we raised enough money to train up 6 puppies for the Guide Dogs for the Blind, purely by Beanie Babies and some signatures. Now, that was great. That only lasted 6 months, and we reached our target, and in fact, we did rather well out of that. When I moved on in the company, somebody said to me, "Paul, you're really good at this fundraising stuff. We want to do something." And I'm thinking, "Oh no, not again." What am I going to do now? Because actually the beanies were great, but sending them out in the post and then getting them back again, and cost of postage, and losing items, and that was a really awkward thing to do, although it was good fun. So I came up with a new idea. Playing cards. Alright? Now, one of the guys did some fundraising already for Great Ormond Street Hospital, the children's charity up in London. So I said, what a fantastic charity. But I don't want to do beanies because, the logistical issues. But playing cards, if you send a couple of those out in a post to get them signed by celebrities, if they don't come back, all you've lost is a couple of cards, pence. And it's a lot cheaper to send that in a post and everything. So that was the idea anyway. So we started, and we got a lot of good signatures to begin with, and we had a big launch party up at the BT Tower. We even ended up in Hello magazine. It was the 150th anniversary of the charity. So hosting a party up at the BT Tower to launch the Star Cards concept was a really good thing to do at that particular time. So we had a lot of children from the hospital, parents, and some of the workers, from the hospital to launch it. And we had some celebrities come. Bear from the Big Blue House came and joined us, lovely fella. And that was the start of something that carried on for over 20 years. Now, what do you do with a pack of playing cards? Well, I thought about themes with the cards. What could you do with number 10s, for example? Well, there we go. There's a number 9 up there with John Major. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but we managed to secure the support of every Prime Minister, going back as far as Margaret Thatcher, right all the way up to Boris Johnson. Then it became a bit difficult. Kind of gave up at that point. But anyway, 7 consecutive Prime Ministers signed for our Star Cards charity. What we used to do when there was an election coming up is to get all the main party leaders to sign the cards for us, and then we would run an auction during the election period up to election day, and we would have a bidometer, so the various parties. So we've got the Liberal Democrats over there, and we've got the Labour Party over here, some other political commentators. And I was really lucky at one stage. There's a fellow in America that contacted me and said, "I can get you President Ford's signature." It was amazing. So we had 7 Prime Ministers and 1 American President support our little fundraising effort. The really nice thing about this is most of the political items ended up in a collection in New York. At the Museum of Democracy. There was a collector there who had accumulated over 1 million items of political memorabilia, and it ended up in the museum. So somewhere in amongst a million other items, there's some Star Cards there. So another theme would be aces, wouldn't it? Tennis players, obviously. When you start thinking about these sort of ideas now. So developing relationships when you're fundraising is kind of key. You kind of start off with a really small ask that is very easy to do. and then you develop those relationships, and those relationships can build into something quite special. So the relationships I built with the Women's Tennis Association and the Men's Association, which is the ATP Tour, lasted for 20 years, and it turned into something I think was quite, well, it was special to me and special to the charity because it was really beneficial. You can see over here, Leander Pace and Jamie Delgado. This was on the very first visit we took the players to the hospital. Leander Pace was doubles partner to Martina Navratilova, if you don't know him. And Jamie Delgado was a British player, but he ended up coaching Andy Murray. Kim Price was a regular supporter as well. She came along to many of our events and helped us up a great deal. Ana Ivanovic, one of the world's leading tennis players, a Serbian player, she became our official supporter for about 3 or 4 years and was promoting us actively on her website, and every time we had an auction she was donating extra items like her players' passes and stuff like that. So it was going beyond the cards and getting additional items, which was fantastic. There's the big four from the men's tour. They're looking a bit younger, I think, some of them. But again, there we go, there's the Aces theme. I guess you can name them all. But Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, and there's Mr. Murray up there. So we're getting into a lot of these players supporting us on a regular basis and donating some really interesting items. Sharapova, Serena Williams donating their trainers to us and all that kind of stuff. This jacket here was sort of like an attempt to replicate the Tour de France yellow jacket thing that the WTA came up with. They didn't continue with it, it was the only one they ever made, and they gave it to us, and it was signed by a lot of former world #1 players. Now, additional benefit is having this relationship with the tennis authorities over many years is that I was a governor at a local school and my wife and my 2 daughters worked there as well. But being in Eastbourne, just down the road there, I was able to invite them every year when they came along to the tennis tournament to come and meet the children at the school. And we made a big fuss out of them, out of the players, and they made a big fuss out of the children, and it became their most popular visit on the tour annually. In fact, it was the only organisation or school anywhere in the world to get an annual visit. Usually it was a one-off or whatever, but we had players come along for over a decade to the school. You can see all the players here. We'll mention Elena Beltaccia, the Scottish lady, unfortunately several years after she came to the school. She sadly passed away with liver cancer, which was very sad. And Marion Bartoli, the French player, she came to the school, and unfortunately they would often win the Eastbourne tournament, but going on to win Wimbledon it evaded us. It was always hoping for the children that the tennis player would go on and win Wimbledon, but they never did until Marion Bartoli, a French girl, and she eventually went on just a week later to go on and win Wimbledon. So moving away from tennis, Formula One. Again, a nice long relationship with all the Formula One drivers. So every single Formula One driver for over a decade was signing and supporting the Star Cards concept. And so we would often put a big montage together, have individual players sign some t-shirts and all that kind of stuff, put individual items together. They would go for serious money. I mean, we're talking probably £800–900 per item in the auctions, just for a signed playing card, put in a little frame. So it was very beneficial. Another thing would be jokers. I never did Kings and Queens, unfortunately, but there you go, that was an ask too much. But yeah, there's some jokers for you, some comedians that supported us along the way. Something close to my heart, guitarists. My friend Ray Russell's been involved with this as well. But yeah, there's some great names up there, from guitarists that around the world that joined us, and obviously they raised a lot of money for us as well. Film and television, there's some faces there you might notice. One of my favourite ones was this one here, old Ronnie Barker. He wrote a really nice letter saying, basically, it's me, of course it's me, it couldn't be anybody else, it's definitely me. in his style, you know. One of my favourite signatures, if you ask me my favourite signatures, is Fred Dibner over there on the... Now, if you remember Fred, he was a steeplejack, yeah, and he was famous for that, and steam engines, he was into steam engines. But he was a sign writer, and his signature was the most beautiful, I think, of all the signatures that I've seen over many, many years. Okay. Here we go. You might recognise some faces here. So these are the ladies from Birds of a Feather. They were down in Eastbourne signing for me. Of course, Linda was at our original launch party at the BT Tower when we started back in 2002. More big names here. Rod Stewart, Cliff Richard at the top there, Phil Collins, and all the guys. So it became really popular, and obviously, you know, every year we could come up with a really good Christmas auction. So we did a big Christmas auction every year. We did a tennis auction during the Wimbledon period. We did the elections when they were up. We did the Grand Prix with the racing drivers when they were on, and everything like that. Okay. Kerry Ellis, a big West End star. She was a lovely lady, and she became one of our official supporters as well for a number of years. She was, she became friends with Brian May, did many albums with Brian over the years. But she was lovely, and I've got a little video of her at home, of her singing to one of the little girls in the hospital, who said, "Can you sing for me?" And she sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" to this little girl. Really touching. This poor little girl who sadly didn't live much longer after that. Musical theatre, again, another love of our family is the musical theatre side of things, and you know, the big West End shows were supporting us as well. We Will Rock You, and my friends, a couple of friends in that in the cast and musicians playing that on a regular basis, but that was a good one. Now, if you remember back in the day, I was in the Navy years ago, so I put these two passions together. I spoke to the Admiralty and said, any chance we could borrow a warship, please? And this is what happened, okay? HMS Cornwall, one of the largest, most heavily armed frigates in the Royal Navy, was brought over from a visit in Russia. For us, came to Tilbury on the Thames. We picked up 200 patients, parents, guardians, and staff at Tilbury Docks. We came up the River Thames with everybody, come up to Tower Bridge and berthed along HMS Belfast and had a reception in the evening. It's the first time the Royal Navy have ever done anything like that. And it's the first event that Great Ormond Street, as an organisation, has ever had all of their top brass, the chairman, the CEOs and everybody at one event. And it was a massive success. We had the Royal Marine Band, and I took the crew up to the BT Tower for breakfast as a little treat for them, try and give something back. And that was a really special day, and something that we've never been able to repeat. So 10 years in, we had a big celebration party back up the BT Tower. Had a very special auction there again. There's Brian May sitting in the background with a guitar that he donated to us. And again, that was a lovely evening, and it was a pleasure to be there, and you know, something to remember. We did have a few cheque presentations, and we didn't just take the money and we did give it to the organisation. In fact, over the years, we raised in the region of £300,000 for the organisation. Now, the company were really interested in what I was doing. I was working for BT, and they had their own charitable organisation that they called the Supporters Club. So they asked me to sort of take that into them, and we started doing things with those you know, sports stars that BT Sport were involved with, and the presenters there. And eventually that took us over to Rio for the Street Child World Cup, which was another fantastic event that I was glad to be involved with. So, as you can see, if you've got a really simple idea, you can make something quite magical out of it. And that's what this country is so great at doing. And I pay tribute to anybody who does any form of fundraising, because it's not easy, but it can be great fun. And I had a lot of fun over the last 40 odd years being a fundraiser. Thank you.